The massive hospital ship, Hippocrates, moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space, its white metal walls shining like a beacon against the black void. Captain Lee Hana walked through the long corridors, her boots making soft clicking sounds on the polished floor. She had been running this ship for 3 years now, and every day brought new challenges. The ship was enormous, bigger than most cities back on Earth. It had to be. Inside these walls lived and worked 3,000 people from dozens of different alien species, all united by one simple goal: saving lives. Human doctors worked alongside 6 armed Centaurian surgeons. Tall blue-skinned Arcturian nurses helped tiny furry Procyon medics carry equipment that would be too heavy for their small frames. Lee Hana paused at one of the large windows that lined the main corridor. Outside, she could see the red crosses, painted on the ship's hull, each one as big as a house. These symbols were recognized throughout the galaxy as signs of medical neutrality. No one was supposed to attack a hospital ship. It was one of the few laws that every species in the galaxy agreed on. "Captain," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Kim Soo-min approaching, her medical coat wrinkled from a long shift in surgery. Kim had been working for 18 hours straight, treating wounded soldiers from a battle that had happened 3 star systems away. "How are our patients doing?" Lee Hana asked. Kim rubbed her tired eyes. "Better. We saved most of them, the Altarian. Soldiers are healing quickly. Their species recovers faster than most. The human Marines will need a few more days, but they'll make it home to their families." This was how it always worked on the Hippocrates. They didn't ask which side you fought for or what species you were. If you were hurt, they fixed you. If you were dying, they saved you. It was that simple. The ship's AI system constantly broadcast their medical neutrality codes on every frequency known to galactic civilization. The message was always the same. This is the hospital ship, Hippocrates. We are a medical vessel operating under galactic law. We treat all wounded regardless of species or faction. Lieutenant Park Min-ho sat at his station on the bridge, monitoring communication channels. He was young for his rank, only 25 Earth years old, but he had sharp ears and quick fingers. His job was to listen for distress calls from across this sector of space. The Kepler neutral zone was supposed to be safe territory where no fighting was allowed. But wars have a way of spilling over boundaries, and wounded ships often limped into neutral space looking for help. The Fondatais, Hippocrates, was always ready. "Captain, I'm picking up something," Park Min-ho called out, his voice carrying across the quiet bridge. "It's weak, but it's definitely a distress signal." Lee Hana walked over to his station. "Can you clean it up?" Park Min-ho's fingers danced across his control panel, filtering out static and background noise. Slowly, a voice became clear through the speakers. It was speaking in Zephyrian, one of the more aggressive species in this part of the galaxy. "This is Destroyer Blade of Honor," the voice said, crackling with desperation. "We have taken heavy damage, hull breaches on multiple decks. We have wounded who need immediate medical attention. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." Now the bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Zephyrians. They were a proud warrior species who rarely asked for help from anyone, especially humans. Their military had been getting more aggressive lately, attacking human merchant ships and claiming they were carrying weapons. Commander Yoon Jae-sung, the ship's tactical officer, stepped forward. His job was to keep the Hippocrates safe, and he took that responsibility seriously. "Captain, I don't like this. Zephyrian forces have been hostile to our people for months. This could be a trap." Lee Hana looked at the star charts displayed on the main screen. The Zephyrian ship was only 2 hours away at maximum speed, close enough to help, but also close enough to be dangerous if Commander Yoon was right about it being a trap. Dr. Kim Soo-min had joined them on the bridge. "Captain, if they have wounded, we have to respond. That's what we do. That's why we're out here." "But Captain," Commander Yoon continued, 3 human cargo ships have been attacked by Zephyrian forces in the past month. They're not exactly our friends right now." Lee Hana closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. She had made decisions like this hundreds of times before, but it never got easier. The safety of her crew had to be balanced against their mission to save lives. She opened her eyes and looked around the bridge at her officers. These people trusted her to make the right choice, and she wouldn't let them down. "Set course for the Zephyrian ship," she said firmly. "Maximum speed, and send a message to let them know we're coming." "Yes, Captain," Park Min-ho replied, already working on his console. As the Hippocrates changed direction and began accelerating toward the distressed vessel, Lee Hana felt the familiar weight of command on her shoulders. She had no way of knowing that this simple act of mercy would soon trigger the greatest military response in human history. The Hippocrates approached the damaged Zephyrian destroyer slowly, its engines humming quietly through the ship's corridors. Captain Lee Hana stood on the bridge, watching the wounded vessel grow larger on their main screen. The destroyer's hull was torn open in several places, with pieces of metal floating around it like deadly confetti. "Captain," they're responding. "To our hails," Lieutenant Park Min-ho reported from his communication station. "They're requesting immediate docking for medical evacuation." Dr. Kim Soo-min was already preparing her medical teams. She had worked through the night getting the emergency medical bays ready. Beds were prepared, surgical equipment was sterilized, and blood supplies from multiple species were standing by. She had even called in off-duty doctors to help with what looked like it would be a challenging rescue operation. "How many wounded are we looking at?" Captain Lee asked. "They're reporting 43 casualties, Captain," Park Min-ho replied. "Some critical, some stable. They're asking us to hurry." Commander Yoon Jae-sung stood at his tactical station, his eyes fixed on the sensor readings. Something felt wrong to him, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. The space around them seemed too quiet, too empty for an area where a battle had recently taken place. "Captain, I'm not detecting any debris from enemy ships," he said carefully. "If the Zephyrians were in a battle, where are the ships that attacked them?" Lee Hana frowned. It was a good question, but wounded people didn't have time for lengthy investigations. "Maybe the attackers left after the battle. Let's focus on saving lives right now." The Hippocrates extended its docking tubes toward the destroyer. These flexible metal tunnels would create a safe passage between the two ships, allowing the medical teams to bring the wounded across without exposing them to the vacuum of space. Doctor Kim Soo-min was in Medical Bay 7 with her team, waiting for the first patients to arrive. She had Dr. Choi Ji-ho standing by in the main surgical theater, along with nurses from 4 different species. They had saved thousands of lives working together, and today would be no different. "Docking complete," announced the ship's computer, in its calm electronic voice. "Atmospheric pressure equalized. Medical teams may proceed." The first group of Zephyrian wounded came through the docking tube on floating stretchers. They were tall reptilian beings with tough, scaly skin that was now covered in burns and cuts. Dr. Kim immediately began triage, quickly deciding which patients needed surgery first and which could wait. "This one needs immediate attention," she called out, pointing to a young Zephyrian soldier whose breathing was labored. "Get him to Dr. Choi right now." As more wounded came aboard, the medical bays filled with activity. Human doctors worked alongside alien nurses, speaking in the universal language of medicine. Species barriers disappeared when lives were at stake, but unknown to anyone aboard the Hippocrates, space around them was beginning to shimmer. Admiral Zhou of the Zephyrian Third Fleet had been hunting human ships for weeks. His superiors had convinced him that humans were using their hospital ships to spy on other species' military operations. In his mind, the Hippocrates wasn't a medical vessel at all, but a cleverly disguised warship gathering intelligence. "Decloak. All vessels," he ordered from his command ship, "prepare weapons." The space around the Hippocrates suddenly filled with Zephyrian warships as their cloaking devices deactivated. 37 heavily armed vessels appeared out of nowhere, their weapons already charging with deadly energy. On the bridge of the Hippocrates, alarms began screaming. "Captain, we're surrounded!" Commander Yoon shouted over the noise. 37 Zephyrian warships just decloaked around us. Captain Lee couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Get me a communication channel with their fleet commander, now." But Admiral Zhou wasn't interested in talking. In his mind, he had caught a human spy ship in the act. The fact that they were actually treating his own wounded soldiers only convinced him more that this was an elaborate deception. "Fire," he ordered. The first plasma volley lit up space like an artificial sun. Bright green energy beams lanced out from a dozen Zephyrian ships, all aimed at the defenseless hospital vessel. Medical Bay 7 took a direct hit. The entire section exploded in a burst of fire and escaping atmosphere. Dr. Choi Jiho, who had been in the middle of surgery on a Zephyrian soldier, was vaporized instantly along with his entire surgical team. 23 human medical staff and over 200 patients from 12 different species died in that first blast. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the ship, trying to contain the damage. Red lights flashed in every corridor as the ship's AI activated emergency protocols. "Hull breach in Medical Bay 7, someone screamed over the communication system. "All emergency teams to Section 4. Captain Lee felt her world spinning. This couldn't be happening. No one attacked hospital ships. It was unthinkable. It violated every law of civilized warfare. Dr. Kim Soo-min's voice came over the ship's communication system, crackling with static and fear. "This is Chief Medical Officer Kim in Medical Bay 12. We're trying to evacuate the pediatric ward, but the bulkheads are sealed. We need help." Before anyone could respond, a second volley of plasma fire struck the ship. This time, the main medical center took the hit. The lights went out across half the ship as power systems failed. The screaming stopped from Medical Bay 12. Captain Lee tried desperately to reach the Zephyrian fleet. "This is Captain Lee Hana of the hospital ship Hippocrates. We are a medical vessel operating under galactic law. You are attacking your own wounded. Please cease fire." But her words fell on deaf ears. Admiral Kreshetar was convinced he was attacking a military target, not a hospital. The third volley finished what the first two had started. In 23 minutes it was over. 800 medical staff and 1,200 patients were dead. The Hippocrates, humanity's gift of mercy to the galaxy, was nothing but floating. Debris and frozen bodies. The unthinkable had happened. Someone had attacked a hospital ship and they had done it deliberately. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you attacked human healers. The news hit Earth like a physical blow. Within 4 hours of the attack, every human colony, space station, and military base had received the emergency transmission. The final moments of the Hippocrates played on screens across human space, showing the bright flashes of plasma fire tearing through the white hospital ship. Admiral Zhang Wusong was in his office on Lunar Base when his aide burst through the door without knocking. Lieutenant Colonel Park Hee-jin had tears streaming down her face as she handed him the datapad. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said, her voice shaking. Zhang took the pad and watched the recording. He had seen combat footage before, had witnessed the horrors of war firsthand during his 30 years of service. But this was different. This wasn't soldiers dying in battle. This was doctors and nurses being murdered while they tried to save lives. "How many survivors?" he asked quietly. "None, sir," Park replied. "All 3,000 crew members are confirmed dead. 800 medical staff, 1,200 patients from 17 different species, and 1,000 support personnel." Yang set down the datapad and stared out his window at the blue marble of Earth hanging in space. Somewhere down there, 3,000 families were about to learn that their loved ones weren't coming home. Mothers would cry for their daughters. Children would ask when Daddy was coming back from his mission to help sick people. "Get me a direct line to the Federation Council," he said. "Emergency session, now." The emergency meeting of the Terran Federation Council was held in the underground, chambers beneath Geneva. Representatives from every human world gathered either in person or through holographic projection. The chamber, which usually echoed with debate and political arguments, was silent as Admiral Zhang presented the evidence. Councillor Han Minji from New Seoul Colony was the first to speak after the presentation ended. "They killed children," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the large chamber. "The pediatric ward had 63 young patients from 8 different species. They killed children who were sick." Councillor Kim Dong-hyun from the Mars settlement stood up slowly. His own daughter had been a nurse on the Hippocrates 2 years ago. "My friends, we have seen evil today. Pure, simple evil. They didn't just attack a hospital ship. They attacked the very idea that mercy should exist in this universe." The debate that followed wasn't really a debate at all. Representative after representative stood to speak, and every single one said the same thing. This could not go unanswered. President Yoon Seong-jun called for the vote at exactly 1400 hours, Earth Standard Time. The question was simple. Should humanity declare total war against the Zephyrian Empire? The vote was 847 to 0. For the first time in human history, the Federation Council had reached complete agreement on a major military action. But the politicians weren't the only ones responding. Across human space, something unprecedented was happening. Captain Song Ji-won was hauling medical supplies between the outer colonies when the news reached his merchant vessel, Golden Dawn. He immediately changed course and headed for the nearest military depot. "This is Captain Song broadcasting on all frequencies," he announced. "Any human ship that can hear this, we're going to war. Real war. They crossed a line that should never be crossed." His message was picked up and repeated by hundreds of other civilian captains. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even luxury yachts began converging on military bases throughout human territory. Major Kang Yuna was leading a training exercise on Titan when her communication officer handed her the emergency bulletin. She read it twice, then looked at her squadron of fighter pilots. "Listen up," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the hangar. "Our medics, our doctors, our nurses, they were murdered while saving lives. We're going to make sure that never happens again." The response from humanity's military was swift and absolute. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon system that humanity possessed began moving towards Zephyrian space. But it wasn't just the military responding. Corporate security fleets abandoned their profitable trade routes. The Hyundai Stellar Corporation donated its entire merchant marine to the war effort. Samsung Military Industries opened its classified weapon vaults and began shipping experimental technology to frontline units. Even the criminals were volunteering. Captain Cho Min-soo had been a pirate for 15 years, raiding cargo ships along the frontier. But when he heard about the Hippocrates, he brought his entire crew to the nearest Federation base. "We may be thieves," he told the recruiting officer, "but we're human thieves, and humans protect their healers." The Zephyrian Empire had no idea what was coming. Their intelligence reports had always described humanity as a peaceful species, more interested in trade and exploration than warfare. They had a decent military, the report said, but nothing compared to the great warrior races of the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong those reports were. Admiral Zhang stood in the command center of the newly constructed Warfleet gathering, near Jupiter. Through the massive windows, he could see ships stretching to the horizon and beyond. Sleek destroyers floated next to massive cargo haulers that had been hastily converted to troop transports. Experimental warships that most people didn't know existed emerged from hidden bases throughout the solar system. Colonel Yoon Tae-hyun approached with the latest numbers. "Sir, final count is 53,417 vessels. Everything from patrol boats to the Seoul Defense Fleet's flagship. We've never assembled anything like this." "And civilian volunteers?" "Over 2 million people, sir. We had to turn away applicants because we don't have enough ships to carry them all." Zhang nodded. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now they were pushing back with everything they had. "Send the message to all ship commanders," he ordered. "We jump to Zephyrian space in 12 hours. No quarter will be given until every Zephyrian military asset is destroyed." As the message went out to the massive fleet, one more transmission was sent to the Zephyrian Empire. It was simple and direct. "You attacked our healers. Now face the consequences." The Zephyrian High Command had been tracking human fleet movements for 2 weeks, but nothing could have prepared them for what appeared on their long-range sensors. Admiral Kreshitar, the same officer who had ordered the attack on the Hippocrates, stood frozen in his command center as reports poured in from across Zephyrian space. "Sir, we're detecting massive human fleet movements on all fronts," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "Initial count shows over 50,000 vessels." Kreshitar laughed nervously. "That's impossible. Human military intelligence suggests they have maybe 8,000 ships total. Your sensors must be malfunctioning." But the sensors weren't wrong. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was revealing the true extent of their military capability. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid bases, underwater facilities on ocean worlds, and secret construction yards throughout human space were emerging into the light. The first shock came at the Zephyrian border system of Cathara Prime. Commander Li Xiano's advanced scout force jumped into the system with what the Zephyrians thought would be a small probing attack. Instead, 3,000 human vessels materialized simultaneously. Zephyrian vessels, this is Commander Li Xianho of the Terran Federation, came the transmission. You have 30 seconds to surrender or be destroyed. We offer this chance only once. The Zephyrian garrison commander, Admiral Vorthak, had 800 ships under his command. He had won dozens of battles against other species and considered himself one of their finest military minds. He opened fire immediately. It was over in 4 minutes. The humans didn't fight like anyone the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Weapon systems that violated several galactic conventions emerged from hidden compartments on human vessels. Major Kang Yuna led her fighter squadron through the Zephyrian defense lines with impossible precision. Her pilots seemed to know where enemy ships would be before the enemy commanders had even decided to move there. How are they doing this? Admiral Vorthak screamed into his communication system as his flagship took hit after hit from weapons that his shields couldn't stop. No organic mind can react this fast. He was right. The humans had been developing artificial intelligence systems in secret for decades. Not the simple computer programs that other species used, but true artificial minds that could think and react faster than any biological brain. Captain Song Ji-won's converted merchant vessel, Golden Dawn, was now equipped with an AI system that could track and target 1,000 enemy ships simultaneously. The AI didn't just calculate firing solutions, it predicted enemy movements, analyzed their tactics, and adapted its strategies in real time. Target their command ship, Song ordered his AI companion. Calculating optimal approach vector, the AI responded in a calm female voice. Enemy vessel will attempt to retreat in 14 seconds, adjusting intercept course accordingly. The AI was right. Exactly 14 seconds later, Admiral Vorthak ordered a retreat, only to find human ships already positioned to cut off his escape route. But the real shock came when the humans unveiled their strategic weapons. Colonel Park Hye-won's special warfare unit deployed something the galaxy had never seen before. Kinetic bombardment platforms that could accelerate chunks of metal to near-light speed. The Zephyrian fortress world of Nexus 7 had massive defensive shields that could stop any known weapon. They found out too late that they couldn't stop a telephone pole-sized piece of tungsten moving at 30% of light speed. The impact created a crater visible from orbit and knocked out the planet's entire defensive grid in a single shot. "Sir, their weapons are impossible," reported the Zephyrian science officer on the command ship. "The energy requirements alone should exceed what their power systems can generate." But humanity had been holding back more than just ships and weapons. They had been developing technology in secret, sharing their discoveries among themselves, while presenting a peaceful face to the galaxy. Dr. Yoon Jaemin had spent 20 years developing fusion reactors that were smaller and more efficient than anything other species possessed. His power systems could run a battleship for months on the same fuel that would power a Zephyrian destroyer for a week. Engineer Kim Tae-young had revolutionized manufacturing using nanotechnology and automated factories. While other species took years to build a single warship, humans could construct a dozen vessels in the same time period. The Zephyrian military found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to have unlimited resources and impossible technology. But the worst revelation was yet to come. Admiral Zhang's main fleet arrived at the Zephyrian home system 3 days after the border attacks began. The defending fleet outnumbered the humans 2-1, but numbers meant nothing when your enemy had weapons that could destabilize stars. "Sir, human vessels are deploying something new," the Zephyrian sensor operator reported. "Energy signatures are unlike anything in our database." What they were seeing were humanity's most closely guarded secrets, weapons that could affect stellar mechanics themselves. The humans had learned to manipulate gravity, to create artificial black holes, and to trigger controlled stellar flares. Warning. To all Zephyrian forces, Admiral Zhou broadcast on all frequencies. You have 10 minutes to surrender your entire fleet. If you do not comply, we will demonstrate why attacking human medical personnel was the worst mistake your species has ever made. Admiral Kreshtar, now commanding the Home Defense Fleet, refused to believe what he was seeing. They're bluffing, he told his staff. No species has that kind of power. 10 minutes later, the humans fired a single weapon at the system's outer star. The star's surface erupted in a massive solar flare that knocked out every electronic system in the Zephyrian fleet simultaneously. Floating helpless in space with their ships dead in the water, the Zephyrian commanders finally understood the truth. Humanity hadn't been holding back because they were weak. They had been holding back because they were terrifyingly strong. The species that the galaxy had dismissed as young newcomers had been quietly building the most advanced military force in known space. They had developed weapons that other civilizations couldn't even imagine, and they had done it all while maintaining the appearance of peaceful explorers and traders. Now, with their healers murdered and their mercy betrayed, humanity was revealing what they were truly capable of. The Zephyrian Empire, which had controlled dozens of star systems and commanded respect throughout the galaxy, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had barely considered a threat. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible happened before their eyes. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating a level of military sophistication that made every other species' armed forces look primitive by comparison. The orange glow of fires could be seen from orbit as Admiral Zhou's fleet settled into position around Zephyrian Prime. The planet's capital city was burning, not from human weapons but from the chaos that had erupted when their military command structure collapsed. Zephyrian civilians ran through the streets, unsure whether the humans would show mercy or exact revenge. General Li Sionho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet turn slowly below them. His ground forces had secured every major military installation without firing a shot. The Zephyrian army had simply surrendered when they realized their fleet was gone and their weapons were useless. "Sir, we're receiving thousands of surrender requests from individual Zephyrian commanders," reported his communication officer. "They're asking what terms we'll accept." Li looked at the tactical display showing human ships surrounding the planet. 50,000 vessels, enough firepower to turn the world into glass within minutes. The Zephyrians knew it, and they were terrified. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. "All frequencies." The communication went out to every television, radio, and personal device on Zephyrian Prime. Billions of civilians stopped what they were doing to listen to the human general who held their fate in his hands. "People of Zephyrian Prime," General Li began, his voice calm and steady. 3 weeks ago, your military attacked our hospital ship. They murdered 800 doctors and nurses who were trying to save lives. They killed 1,200 patients, including children who were sick and hurt. The planet fell silent. Even the riots in the capital city stopped as people listened. Your leaders told you we were spies. They convinced you that our healers were soldiers. They were wrong. The men and women on the Hippocrates were there for one reason only: to help anyone who needed medical care, regardless of species or politics. Admiral Kreshtar, now a prisoner aboard the human flagship, listened to the broadcast from his cell. He had spent the last 3 days reviewing the evidence his captors had shown him. Medical records, personal letters from doctors to their families, video logs of Zephyrian soldiers being treated with the same care as human patients. The truth was undeniable. He had ordered the destruction of a real hospital ship filled with real healers. The weight of that knowledge was crushing him. "However," General Li continued, "we are not here for revenge. We are here to teach a lesson that the galaxy must never forget." On the planet's surface, Dr. Park Soo-young was already setting up the first human medical station in the ruins of Zephyrian Prime's largest hospital. She had lost her husband aboard the Hippocrates. Dr. Choi Ji-ho had been in the middle of surgery when the plasma cannons hit Medical Bay 7. Yet here she was, treating Zephyrian civilians who had been injured in the chaos following their military's defeat. A young Zephyrian mother brought her sick child to the human medical station, terrified but desperate for help. "Please," the mother said in broken galactic standard, "my daughter, she has fever." Very sick. Dr. Park took the child gently, running, her scanner over the small reptilian form. Bacterial infection, she diagnosed quickly. Easy to treat. She'll be fine in 2 days. As she administered the medicine, the Zephyrian mother stared at her in confusion. Why you help? She asked. We kill your people. Dr. Park paused in her work, thinking of her husband. Because this is what we do, she said softly. We heal. We save lives. That's who humans are. Similar scenes were playing out across the conquered planet. Human medical teams were setting up clinics in every major city. Engineering corps were repairing power plants and water treatment facilities. Instead of an army of occupation, the Zephyrians found themselves facing an army of builders and healers. But while humans showed mercy to the civilians, they showed none to the military infrastructure that had enabled the attack on the Hippocrates. Every Zephyrian warship was dismantled down to its component parts. Every weapons factory was converted to produce medical equipment. Every military academy was closed and turned into a hospital or school. Colonel Yoon Tae-hyun oversaw the systematic destruction of Zephyrian military power. Sir, we've confirmed the destruction of their last shipyard, he reported to General Lee. They no longer have the capability to build anything larger than a patrol boat. Good, Lee replied. Make sure they never forget what happens when someone attacks our healers. The rebuilding process took months, but gradually Zephyrian Prime began to recover. The planet's new hospitals were the most advanced medical facilities in that region of space, staffed by both human and Zephyrian doctors working together. Young Zephyrian medical students learned alongside humans, studying the same techniques that had been used aboard the Hippocrates. They learned about triage, about treating patients regardless of species, about the sacred duty of medical neutrality. Captain Song Ji-won, whose merchant vessel had been converted to a hospital ship, worked with Zephyrian engineers to rebuild their medical transport network. Your people need to understand, he told them, a hospital ship is sacred. You never ever attack medical personnel. The lesson spread beyond Zephyrian space. News of humanity's response traveled to every corner of the galaxy. Species that had never heard of the Hippocrates learned its story. They learned what humans did to protect their healers. The Galactic Council passed new legislation within 6 months. Any attack on medical personnel or facilities would now trigger automatic intervention by human forces. The Hippocrates Protocol became galactic law, backed by the threat of human military power. A year after the attack, a new hospital ship was launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. Also named Hippocrates, it was larger and more advanced than its predecessor. But its mission remained the same, to heal anyone who needed help anywhere in the galaxy. Dr. Kim Soo-min, one of the few survivors from the original ship who had been on leave during the attack, became its new chief medical officer. As the ship began its first mission, she stood in the main medical bay and spoke to her diverse crew. We're healers, she said simply. That's what makes us human. We save lives, we show mercy, we help anyone who needs it. But the galaxy now knows that if you attack us while we're doing our job, you'll face consequences beyond your worst nightmares. The new Hippocrates sailed into deep space, its red crosses gleaming against the black void. Behind it, human warships maintained silent watch, ready to ensure that mercy would never again be met with violence. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's compassion was infinite, but so was their wrath when that compassion was betrayed. The price of attacking human healers was the complete destruction of your ability to make war ever again.